Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, so we, believe it or not, in the time is a flat circleness that is 2020, we have officially reached the point of the year where I can do my Q1 and Q2 ARC ratings for 2020. So if you don't know, if you are not a watcher of this channel, well, first of all, you can see my kitty cat frolicking on the bookcases behind me, so you may be seeing them come in and out of frame here. If you don't know, every quarter, I like to do a review roundup of all of the ARCs that I have received for that time period. And basically what that means, ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy. And I feel like part of being a good steward of the fact that I am a reviewer and I get to read upcoming books before they are released, I get to read them early. Part of what I feel like I need to do to be a good steward of that is to be sure that I am consistently talking about my reviews of them. So they're always posted on Goodreads. You can find them there. I talk about them in my wrap-ups and whatnot, you know, kind of here, there, and everywhere. But I feel like this is a good way to sort of like give you a review, give you my take on what I did and didn't like of the book releases that are coming out. So I think I have already read one Q3 book, so I'm going to exclude that. So we've got 24 books that I have read that are coming out between January and June 2020. And I'm only going to spend time talking about the ones that are new to the list. I'll gloss over the ones that I talked about already in the last video. And my taste does tend towards mystery, nonfiction, romance, and SFF for Frontlist, just as an FYI, if you're wondering the kind of books that are likely to show up here. I guess without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive on into it. I'm real sad to say that, well, okay, let me frame this more positively. The good news is none of the books that I have to talk to you about are under a 3-star, and actually looking at the average rating of all of these books is 3.7 stars. So that's actually pretty darn good, but I am sad to say that the book that is entering the list, and it's entering at the bottom of the list, at least at this point in the year, is Real Men Knit by Kawana Jackson. Now, I'm actually going to use this and a couple other books on this as a springboard into a different video idea, where I talk about books that would have worked better for me if they had been sold to me differently in terms of their genre. So Real Men Knit is actually quite well written, and actually the characters are very compelling. It's a very good family drama, but it is sold as a genre romance. And as a genre romance, I just don't think this is that successful, because in a romance novel, you want to root for the couple, and you've got to root for both people in the couple. And the hero in this one, while he is a very interesting character, like I think he works as a character in fiction, he doesn't work very well as a romance hero, because by the end, I didn't think he deserved to be with the heroine. So like kind of intrinsically in that level, it's failed somewhat, but I gave it 3 stars because I did enjoy it. It's very slow getting started. There's a lot of kind of like info dumpy stuff in the first 10%. So that part maybe wasn't as well written, but the rest of it I thought was actually quite well written and I was engaged by the characters, but I wasn't engaged with the characters in this kind of plot. So for that reason, I couldn't give it more than a 3-star. And I'm actually very interested. This is going to be our We Need Diverse Romance pick that I run on my Discord, like a read-along. It's going to be our pick for June. And I want to hear what other people have to say, if they were able to get through that, basically what people's experience of this book is. Because I do still think it's there is a good book in here. It just isn't very successful as a romance. Actually quite similar. I also gave this 3 stars, and I'm also really sad because I saw the author on a panel for the Social Distance Book Fest, and really liked her and wanted to really love this book, and I just didn't as much as I wanted to. There was, again, parts of this I loved. That is A Taste of Sage by Yafa Santos. It's very similar. If it hadn't been a romance, sold to me as a romance, I think I would have liked this better. And I think if the romantic, I think basically this wanted to be a romance novel, but it's more really a women's fiction-y, chick-lit-y kind of book. I think if it had gone that direction and just had some romantic elements in it, it would have been much more successful. And I probably would have given it a 3.5 or a 4-star. Because I personally really like the writing. The setup is 2 chefs falling in love. It's kind of like enemies to lovers. And the food piece in particular, I think, is really well done in this book. Like, don't read it if you don't want to eat, because it will make you hungry. Like, it's very evocative in that way. It does the thing where it has a bunch of recipes at the end of each chapter. Like, there is a good book in here, but it is not a very good romance. And I think the way that the back cover is written really fundamentally misleads you as to kind of when different elements of this book kick in. So that was another one that I was sad I didn't like better. Like I said, I think there's a really good book in here. It's just it didn't quite come together the way I hoped it would. Okay, then we've got a few that I already talked about in Q1. Hearts on Hold by Cherish Reed. Liked, but just not that memorable to me. Don't List by Christina Lauren, which is another one where I think genre-wise, it was just a little off. The writing was great. As a romance, it did not work. The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dunn, which I had a really good time in. This is a space YA retelling of Persuasion, and this is just really fun. So that was 3.5 stars. And then we come to another new one, which is The Island Affair by Priscilla Oliveras, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This is a fake relationship, contemporary rom-com-y kind of thing. I really loved the way that this book evoked place. It's set in Key West, and I think that she just really effectively communicated that bit of it. This was a book filled with really nice people getting what they wanted from life, and I just enjoyed that. You know, we're all in lockdown. That's a big thing I go to romance for, is just like, you know, life is hard, and I just need a like pleasant story where I'm really sure that everybody is going to be fine in the end of it. And this delivered that very nicely. The setup, I think, strains credulity. Basically, this woman meets this firefighter. As soon as she gets to Key West, her boyfriend is dumping her on the phone. She sees him. He sees she's in some kind of trouble, says, hey, can I help you with anything? And she ropes him into pretending to be her boyfriend for the week with her family. So like the setup, I think, is you just kind of got to go with it. Some people, I think, can't go with it. I did, and I ended up really enjoying this. I just thought it was a really nice way to pass some time. So like I said, 3.5 stars. It was just a pleasant, good time. Oh, whoa, I just realized we got a whole run of ones we've already talked about when I'm looking at this list that were in Q1. Okay, so we'll just try to turn through these real quick. Love Hard by Nalini Singh. Friends in Childhood, Getting Together, Rugby Players, Good Times. Also Nalini Singh, who is a goddess. She will show up again. Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey, which is a dystopia Western kind of thing with a lot of queer elements to it. And I think was really fun. 3.5 stars. Like, it was a novella, so I think it probably could have benefited from being a little fleshed out, but pretty good overall. Matzo Ball Surprise by Laura Brown, which is another fake dating relationship. You will see that's a trope I very much enjoy. Coming home from the holidays, but the holidays this time is Passover, which I had never seen before and was just excited, honestly, to see a kind of variation on the traditional holiday romance. It has kind of an abrupt ending, but I think overall is a fun book. Well, hey, it's future me coming at you. I just realized that I accidentally left a book out, because, you know, that's just how it goes. So I gave 3.5 stars to Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. This is a mystery, like a domestic thriller kind of thing. And I thought that this was really good in terms of just objectively, like quality-wise. I am very intrigued to try more from this author because I thought the writing in particular was very nice. And I think the way she kind of just like her approach to the story she was telling was intriguing to me and a little bit different than something I've read before. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars because the trope combo in here isn't quite my favorite. It is a missing child, mom is trying to get him back story, plus she thinks her husband is cheating on her, that kind of a domestic thriller. And those are not necessarily two of my favorite elements in a domestic thriller, so I think that kept me from just like loving this, but I thought it was really well done. And like I said, I'm very intrigued to try more from this author. So I would definitely recommend this. And yeah, I'm always excited to find a new author who intrigues me. 15 is A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Queen Milla Vane, also known as Mel Jean Brooke. Writing is beautiful. This is somewhere between a fantasy romance and a fantasy with heavy romantic elements. She really straddles that line. I think that she's a good gateway if you like fantasy or if you like romance and you're looking to try one or the other. She's going to be really good. It's definitely enemies to lovers. There's some brutality in this book, but it is really well written, and I'm even more excited for the second one. So I gave that one 3.5 stars, but I'm hoping that as the series goes on, my ratings will also be going up. And I do have the next one out that comes out in Q3, so I'm excited to read that. Golden in Death by J.D. Robb. You guys absolutely know I adore the In Death series. This is number 50 in the series. Loved it. I mean, it's not my favorite. It's a 3.5 star, but like a very good version of an In Death book. I think very satisfying. Number 13 is Death in the Family by Tessa Wegert. And this is an isolated closed circle mystery on an island where somebody is missing. The detectives come and they're getting like flooded in on the island. I'm a sucker for that trope, so that's why I liked it so much, to be totally honest. But I know my own taste, so if you like that kind of book, you may enjoy this one too. Number 12 is Problem Child by Victoria Helen Stone, which was a follow-up to my favorite book I've read so far this year, which was Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. I would call this like a psychological thriller kind of thing, but really more of a character study. Definitely read the first one before you get to this one. 11 is Headliners by Lucy Parker. I really love the way she does contemporary romance. This is a true enemies to lovers contemporary romance. It's not my favorite in the series, but I think Lucy Parker is just like a real go-to for me for contemporary romance. I think she's a very easy point of entrance if you are looking to try contemporary romance. Her characters make sense. Her writing is really nice. She has a nice light touch to humor. They're just really solid. Whew, okay, and then one more before we get back to new books on the list. Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire I've got at number 10. This is 4 stars, and this is 4 stars mostly because I just love Jack in this series. This is the Wayward Children series. And there's a set of twins we meet in the first book called Jack and Jill. Jack for President. Any of these books that have Jack in it end up working pretty well for me. They're really short. This is another series that I think can be a good point of entry for people who are trying to get into fantasy because they are so short. It's just a really solid series. This is the 5th one. And I would say you probably should read them roughly, I guess you kind of got to read them in order. You could skip the 4th book and I think still be understanding what's happening in the 5th book, but read books 1 through 3 first. Okay, so now we get back to Q2s, and hey, the fact that we're at number 9 should tell you that actually I think overall my Q2 arcs were much higher quality, or I gave higher ratings to my Q2 arcs than I did to my Q1s. I read some really good books this quarter, and we're 7 to talk about, so let's do this. So number 9 is To Have and to Hoax by Martha Waters. And I decided to pick this one up because the publicist reached out to me and sent me a little widget for NetGalley. And I was like, okay, I like a rom-com in general. That tends to be sort of the side of romance I like better, ones that are lighter, fun. I don't tend to like a lot of angst. So I was like, okay, I'm always looking for a good new historical author who's not angsty, because I think that is kind of hard to find. There's not as many people working in historicals with a lighter touch. There's more, I think, in contemporary. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. I will tell you, there are some real issues in the pacing and the plot of this book that are not going to work for some people. I can't really tell you specifically what it is without spoiling the book, so I'm not going to get there, but just know that I think that the plot is the weakest part of this book, but the characters and the writing style is so wonderful. The authorial voice reminds me a lot of Tessa Dare, which is a very big compliment. It's just funny. She has a real just like wittiness to her writing. The banter is quality, and the characters I think are really good and make sense. I also like that thematically, even though that this is technically an adult romance, it's sort of transitional between YA and adult, specifically in its thematic content, because a lot of it is about growing up and making choices separate from your parents. So I just really like this, especially for a debut. Like, this has me totally excited to see what else Martha Waters does. And I would definitely keep reading in this series. Like, I can see who the next couples are going to be, and I will definitely keep reading. So this one, like I said, the plot I think is the weakest part, but really promising. And overall, I just had a fun time reading this. Next at number 8 is Girl Gone Viral by Alisha Rai, which is the second book in a contemporary series she has going. You don't need to read these ones in order, I don't think. And this was just really another example of where the plot, I think, is the weakest part of it, which I guess is kind of a theme I'm saying. But I really love the characters and the writing and the themes. Again, this one is a lot about, it's a friends to lovers, and it's between a wealthy woman who we met in book 1 and the head of her security. He is a cinnamon roll. He's real hot. And actually, we'll come back to this for my number 1 pick. He's just yummy. Like, he is so sweet. He's so in touch with his feelings, and I just love that in a contemporary romance. I'm not somebody who's usually that into like uber alphas. Like there'll be a different example of where I can get into that, but I do tend to like, you know, men who have like some sort of emotional fluency as my heroes in these books. This guy does. And this book explores a lot about the impacts of anxiety and like taking that really seriously as like a mental illness and how that impacts life in a really like really explores that. And I think it did a very nice job with that. Again, I just had a good time in this one, even though I do think the plotting is weak. And I guess maybe it shows the difference of really loving both of the characters and really rooting for them, and the difference between giving this a 4-star where I think the romance is a little off versus Real Men Knit or A Taste of Sage, where I didn't really buy the characters as a pair and wasn't really rooting for them. Like that's the difference in the star rating there. There's a 1-star difference. In one, I just really love the characters and wanted them to be together. And that's why I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Yeah, it was just super good. Then at number 7, we have our old pal Glace Draven with Dragon Unleashed. This one is a lot like A Heart of Blood and Ashes, where it really straddles the line between fantasy and romance. There is a heavy romance component of this, but I think I would ultimately, my experience of this book is being a fantasy. Like that's what I read her for. I mean, I like the romance pieces. I think she does them really well. And if you like a slow burn, Homegirl Has Got You. Like this is a very slow burn, but what I really love in this series is the world. Like it's a fun fantasy world, interesting magic systems, interesting, like nothing groundbreaking, but just like very beautiful, like richly evoked. I think she does setting very well and atmosphere very well. And she also just does a great job of writing characters you really are invested in, care about. She gives them real conflicts. She gives them hard situations where they have to make hard choices. And like I said, this is very slow burny romance. So if you like that or are open to that, it has that piece as well. I would say I probably liked this book slightly better than the first one, which is called Phoenix Unbound. But I would say I like Dragon Unleashed a little bit better. And I think it doesn't have some of the like really problematic or like hard, like there's just a lot of content warnings for Phoenix Unbound, and it's not in the same way for this particular book. I really like Glace Draven. I like the way she does fantasy, and this one delivered for me. Not an all-time favorite, and I think it's very hard because she has like one of the most iconic books that straddles the line between fantasy and romance, which is Radiance, and it's very hard for her to ever live up to that one. But she's just a super solid writer, and I think if you enjoy her, you're not going to be disappointed by this one. Okay, another Q1 one is Something That May Shock and Discredit You by Daniel Mallory Ortberg, which is I would call this like a theology of gender / memoir, and it was just excellent, really good. I recommend this to one of my friends, and she really, really enjoyed it, so thumbs up on that. Another Q1 pick, which was Undercover Bromance by Lyssa K. Adams. This was super, super good. My physical copy came in, so now I have that. Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the 5th book in the Murderbot Diary series. It's the first full book because they've been sort of like novellas up until this point, or very short novels. Oh, you can't start with this book if you've not been reading the Murderbot Diary series. So part the first, get your life together and go read All Systems Red. I jokingly on a live stream the other day was like, Tor needs to give me a commission, because the number of people who just in that live stream were like, I read Murderbot because of you. I read Murderbot because of you, because I did not, like, I proselytized about this series. Just go read All Systems Red. It's a novella, and it is a textbook, perfectly executed novella. The character of Murderbot is my actual heart. So good. And this one, I think the only reason I didn't give it a 5 is because I do think she's still figuring out how to use Murderbot effectively in a full novel as opposed to in a shorter novel. So I think that there was a couple of pacing issues, but overall, if you like this series, you're gonna enjoy this, I think. And it's my second favorite in the series behind the first book. So fantastic, loved. Oh, actually, I just realized that I've been looking at these numberings wrong the entire time. So all of these numberings are one off. Oh. I was looking at the Excel row number and not the ranking number, like the one that I had typed. So actually, we're now in the top 3. If in editing I can figure out what went wrong, I'll try to fix it, but probably not. Okay, anyway, number 3, and I will say that these top 3, well, definitely these top 2, I had a hard time picking which one went where. I highly recommend all 3 of these. I mean, you've heard, I like a lot of these, but these 3 are just like so good. Okay, number 3 is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, this is a contemporary romance that is one of the books I would now put in my arsenal of like a good place to start in a contemporary, because I believe Emily Henry has a history of writing YA, and her authorial voice that she then brings to an adult contemporary romance, I think is really fun, fresh, accessible, something a lot of people will connect with. The setup of this one is kind of enemies to lovers or like antipathy to love type thing. These 2 authors are both in this small town, like small beach town in Michigan, and they are both suffering from writer's block, and so they challenge each other to write in each other's genres, because he's more of like a lit fic guy, she's more of a romance gal, so they're each writing in each other's genres. They knew each other in their MFA program, and they're slowly falling in love. And she's got a lot of like family stuff she's going through, he does too, so I just think that this is a really excellent example of a slow burny antipathy to love type contemporary romance. It's really good. It's been, I think, a big hit, a big bestseller for good reason. I would definitely recommend this one if you're looking for something fun to read this summer. If you're looking for a beach read, definitely recommend. And then I did ultimately decide that I had to put Alpha Night by Nalini Singh over Beach Read. I went back and forth, but I think ultimately I did just enjoy Alpha Night better. Some of it is that it broke me out of a reading slump I was in. I can't tell you to start with this book. This is book number like 19, I think, of the Side Changeling series, but it's just so good. It's one of the best books in the series. It's not quite as good as the book that came out last year, which was Wolf Rain, but Alpha Night, if you are a lover of the series, you're going to get into this. It's really, really good. It's a new dynamic that we've not seen in this urban fantasy world before, where we've got essentially like an instant mating happening, which has never happened before. The political machinations are great. It's just all around so good. Such a great example of a Side Changeling book, and that is why I had to put it at number 2. Okay, and then we come to my number 1 pick, which I literally finished reading 2 days ago and was the last book that I needed to read before I felt like I could film this video. And it is my favorite of the ones that I've read so far this year, my favorite 2020 arc that I've received. It is the only 5-star on this list, and it is one of my all-time favorite books now. I just like, okay, take a hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. I read the first one in this series, so the publisher reached out to me about reading this one, and I hadn't read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is the first book in the series, so they sent me that one as well, which was very kind of them. Thank you, HarperCollins. They sent that to me, I read that, and I was like, oh, this is really good. I've already read and enjoyed Talia Hibbert previously. She has one of my favorite paranormal novellas I've ever read, which is called Mating the Huntress. It is bananas and it is great. I knew I liked her, and I liked Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I enjoyed it. This book, though, just gelled I've never given a Talia Hibbert a 5-star before. Like, I've always really enjoyed them, but there's always been something just like not quite work. This book works for me on every single level. The number one thing you need to know, well, 2 things. In terms of my experience, I was smiling the entire time I read this because the banter in this book is so good. I highlighted so many things that made me laugh. Like, I laughed out loud so many times and just like awed so many times. Like, the couple in this are so cute. Some of what the reason why this book just speaks to me is that I think I've rarely seen a book so accurately sum up my issues in a heroine. So just the relatability factor for me personally, I'm like, this is me. So I related to her, and then the hero is such a cinnamon roll. This reminds me a lot of Girl Gone Viral. If Girl Gone Viral and The Right Swipe by Alisha Rai had a baby, it is this book. And it takes everything that I liked about both of those books and melds it together, and then adds in Talia Hibbert's writing. And it's so good. The hero runs a charity for little boys. Like, he's a former rugby player, and he runs a charity for little boys, teaching them about how awful toxic masculinity is and how like he like teaches them to play sports and teaches them that it's okay to cry. Like, it's so great. I'm gushing. This is the first time I've tried to talk about this book. I'm sure it will be in my May wrap up whenever that goes out. And I just love this book so much. I can't wait for people to read it. It's my book club pick for July 2020. We need diverse romance on my Discord, so I hope people will read it. I am going to be evangelizing for this. I just love this book so much, and it's exactly like, it's just such a great contemporary romance for me. So if you have similar taste to me in this kind of book, you need to get your hands on this as soon as you can. Okay, so that is my roundup of arcs for the first half of 2020. You know, barring my little mishap with numbering, I think that went pretty well. And definitely let me know what you thought of any of the books, if you've read any of these yet, the ones that have already come out. Definitely let me know what you thought about some of these. Definitely let me know what your favorite releases so far this year have been, or any that you're excited about for the rest of the year. And I hope that was helpful. Just like my personal experience with these books, letting you know kind of what I think about them. So I think that will do it for now. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today. And I will just talk to you soon. Bye.